On today's show, Keegan Murray's crazy night for the Sacramento Kings in their win against the Utah Jazz. 47 points, 12 made three-pointers. Just how good was Keegan Murray in this game? How important has he been to the Kings' success this season? And what is Keegan Murray's ultimate ceiling as a player? Plus, what has been the Kings' biggest weakness so far this season? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app on the market. And with basketball season here and in full swing, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce in a 10.5 combo of three-pointers made plus reception. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, you've got to give Prize Picks a chance. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for that first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Kings, Matt George. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Kings. And Matt, Keegan Murray with an insane performance Saturday night against the Utah Jazz. 47 points, 12 made three-pointers, just 2 shy of the record held by Klay Thompson. Walk us through that crazy, insane shooting performance from Keegan Murray.
Yeah, it's one of the craziest nights of basketball that I've ever watched. And I mean, just add it to the list of memories that the Sacramento Kings have made, not just over the last couple of seasons since they've really risen to relevancy again, but really just over even the playoff drought. Like, the Kings have sprinkled in some major moments already in the young life of the Golden One Center. And Keegan Murray's night last night might be at the top of the list or darn close to the top of the list. I mean, an NBA record 11 straight three-pointers made. He was unstoppable in that third quarter where it is not just that he scored and hit 12 three-pointers. I mean, he shattered franchise record after franchise record after franchise record. He topped Buddy Hield for most threes in a game. He topped Mitch Richmond for most threes in a quarter in Kings history. He topped both Harrison Barnes and Omri Caspi for most threes in a quarter. I mean, it is just one of those absolutely unbelievable hot streak shooting performances that, regardless of the team you're rooting for, now this is easy for me to say from the Kings perspective and as a massive Keegan Murray fan, and I was a huge Keegan Murray fan before the Kings drafted him. It's one of those performances where, regardless of who you're rooting for, if you call yourself a basketball fan, you call yourself a sports fan, you just sit back, watch, and appreciate someone who is just that on fire. And what's amazing is, and I think this speaks to the Sacramento Kings offense in general, is someone who is shooting that well should not be getting the open looks that Keegan Murray was getting last night. And I give full credit to Domantas Sabonis, to Malik Monk, and the rest of the Kings pieces that were on the floor, because not only did they continue to find Keegan, but they did what they had to do to make sure Keegan had the space to work and the space to go off. And Keegan's big night overshadowed what was a dominant performance from Domantas Sabonis, who for the second time this season against the Jazz made Walker Kessler look like a G League player. They tried throwing Kelly Olynyk at him. That was an absolute embarrassment for the Utah Jazz. Like, there was nothing the Jazz could do against Domas. He set the tone, and then Keegan Murray drove it home with his 47.
I want to know, Keegan Murray was a guy that, I think coming out, right, and this happens a lot with players coming out in the draft, right, you get thrown like kind of a label or something. I thought he was more or less like the most like kind of ready to go player of the bunch from his draft class. Kind of plug and play, right? 3-and-D type personality. But at times I feel like players maybe get painted into a corner with like a player archetype or something. What's the kind of the next step in Keegan Murray's game that you're hoping to see from him moving forward, through the rest of this season?
Well, I'm going to answer that question in a second because I want to go back to what you said about the draft. And look, it's very difficult to be correct about the draft. People are wrong every single year. God knows I've been wrong about draft picks in the past, and the Kings certainly have been wrong a lot about draft picks. But so many people fall in love with athleticism and label athleticism as upside compared to players like Keegan Murray, who are just very fundamentally sound. And the takes around Keegan Murray were that he was a safe pick, but not worthy of a top 4 talent. You have to go for Jaden Ivey in that spot because Jaden Ivey has all this incredible upside. Well, in reality, Jaden Ivey just had an awesome mixed tape of jumps or dunks rather, and could jump out of the gym.
I think jumps is still technically right there, but
yeah, and I get it. Like Jaden Ivey's, like he's a flashy player. He's exciting. He's being wasted away with one of the worst teams we've ever seen in the Detroit Pistons. I'm not blaming Jaden for that, but look, like. It's time for people to kind of eat those words a little bit. And Keegan Murray deserves to take that victory lap too. Now, Keegan's not going to do the talking himself, so allow myself and others to do it for him. Like Keegan was undermined coming out of college. I mean, he's dealt with that throughout his entire college career. He worked his way into a position at Iowa where he could have the opportunity to shine. So to answer your initial question, though, Jackson, he comes to the end, or he's at this NBA level now where he's already statistically established himself as the best defender on the Sacramento Kings. And last night was proof that, okay, he can play at a high level on the defensive end and still make a major impact offensively. He's been shooting, his shooting struggles have lasted pretty consistently throughout this season so far. It was nice to see him have a breakout night like that. He's certainly not going to have 12 3-pointers most nights that he plays, but Keegan is a guy that you have to constantly worry about knocking down 4 or 5 3-pointers any given night. He's a guy that can go for 20 any night if he wants to, and if the shot is falling. And on top of that, he's the guy that's going to lock up your best forward, your best wing, and sometimes even your best guard on the defensive end of the floor. So Keegan just being one of those patented two-way wings that can shoot the you-know-what out of the ball that everybody in the league wants, that's Keegan's archetype, I suppose, in the NBA.
So is it fair to, I mean, like at this point, what kind of feels like Murray's ceiling? Like, is there a world where he blossoms into best player on the team type thing one day, or do you not think that's his role, I guess?
As long as De'Aaron Fox is in Sacramento, Keegan Murray will never be the best player on the team, and that's okay. The Kings look at Keegan Murray as the third piece of that big three, and the Kings very much believe that Keegan Murray is an all-star caliber player. So his ceiling, I think, is an all-star player, and not an all-star that is necessarily starting or someone who's taken the world by storm, but one of those all-stars that you see make 1, 2, 3 all-star games at times over the course of their career. Someone who comes in off the bench in an all-star game, but during the regular season is just that piece that when you're looking at championship teams and teams that are making deep playoff runs, you're so worried about star this and star that. Well, here's this third option that just kills you on the perimeter, that locks you down defensively, and maybe 1 or 2 games during a best-of-7 series can lead the team in scoring and help bring a team a championship. That's what Keegan Murray is, or at least that's what the Kings believe Keegan Murray to be.
I found this kind of semi-interesting stat. I'm curious to see if either you picked up on this already, or if this is not as interesting as I think it is. The Kings have only lost to 4 teams this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird, like I was just like, the kind of rough start, right? You missed De'Aaron Fox for a handful of games, and you lose the back-to-back Warriors matchups. Then you lose back-to-back against Houston in Houston. It's kind of like, oh man, under 500, what's going on? And then they rip off, like there was the 5-6 game win streak and all things are fine. But it's been the Warriors a couple times, the Rockets a couple times, the Pelicans 3 times, and the Clippers twice. They've played 15 teams. They've only lost to those 4 though, which totals their 9 losses. Is there like a common denominator across these teams, Matt? Something that you can draw a line to say there's something that these teams did specifically that really bothered the Kings, or kind of a common denominator between these that's like maybe a weakness of the Kings that got exposed?
Yeah, these 4 teams, they present matchup issues for Sacramento, and Sacramento really struggles with physical, athletic wings. Keegan Murray's trying to guard as many of them as possible, but that is one thing that all four of those teams, maybe with the exception of the Golden State Warriors, because the Warriors kind of jumped on the Kings early when Sacramento was trying to figure some things out. But when it comes to the Rockets, certainly when it comes to the Pelicans, if they can stay healthy, and now the Los Angeles Clippers, if they're able to stay healthy, are teams that just have a lot of wing depth that offensively gives the Kings defense struggles, and the Kings defense is still slowly trying to improve from one of the worst in the league to hopefully league average, which they're making their way there. But on top of that, those teams present a lot of problems for Sacramento defensively too, where they almost force the Kings into taking a boatload of threes. Now, look, the Kings are undefeated. They're 10-0 this season when they shoot 36% or higher from 3-point range. So the Kings, they don't necessarily live or die by the 3-point shot, but if the 3-point pointer's falling, this team is basically unguardable. But what teams like the Rockets, granted they did it without De'Aaron Fox, but still it was impressive. The New Orleans Pelicans especially, is they pack the paint and they make it difficult for Fox and Sabonis and even Malik Monk to do what Mike Brown calls paint touches and spraying. That's a pillar of Mike's offense, is attacking the basket, touching the paint, and then spraying out to the perimeter to that open shot. And Sacramento against those teams has settled far too much on kind of chuck it up, got to have it 3-pointers, because the inside was being cut off and muddied up so much by teams like the Pelicans and the Clippers.
Can Keegan Murray's shot stay hot after a bit of an inconsistent start from the 3-point line this season? And can the Kings figure out some of their woes against those four teams specifically? Thankfully, they don't have to play them too many more times this year. You're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Kings. Matt, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Always a pleasure, Jackson.